to be able to spend Christmas at home with family is certainly special for them. To be able to be in front of fans and your home crowd, this would be great as well.
Maybe, Major, there's certain teams nationally that are brands that travel, Notre Dame, BYU, service academies. I mean, that's kind of, everybody who's an American, you imagine that you see a pretty.
Yeah, I think so, especially as, as strong as the military, the presence in the state of Texas, specifically up there in Fort Worth. There'll be a lot of people that'll show up and always support our academies.
About the challenge their offense will be for your defense.
Yeah, I mean we've seen a version of it, with Navy, and we see that every year on our side of the league. Mm-hmm. It'll be a challenge. Coach Carroll's in there right now. He's looking at some PlayStation plays to be able to get those out against Army. But no, it's a tough offense to get ready for. But we've got some extra practices to not only get ready for that opponent, but also continue to develop depth on our roster.
It's our first chance to talk to you since Ed announced his decision. You said before, y'all have one game without him. Some thoughts about him not being here, and on what he gave here when he was here.
Oh, I mean, think about some of the goals that he had when he came in. One was to play for a conference championship or have the opportunity to win it, and he gave us everything that he had 2 weeks ago for his team to do that. Another was to be the best player in the country and to win national awards. He did that. I know a degree is still one of his goals, and he'll come back and get that. But also a big goal was to be able to put himself in a position to have great earning power. And he's done that, and this is a business decision, and we've talked throughout the season about these things and understand the reality of it and how close he is to his dream, and I support him. We support him wholeheartedly. Appreciate everything he did. He's a phenomenal player, and the best is yet to come. It's still in front of him, but we understand. I mean, that's something we want to do. We want to support our student athletes in our program, and there is a business side to this, and it gets tilted heavily one way. And so when it's time for someone to make a business decision, we want to be all behind them because they've been all behind us.
The finality of that decision
Sorry?
The finality of his decision is at least, feel like it relieves a little bit of stress and pressure on Ed in general. He was probably likely putting some pressure on himself, or
I don't know if it was something that was inevitable, in terms of something that was coming down the pipe. I don't know if you'd have to ask him if it relieves stress from his standpoint, but we've had enough conversations that we both understand, what lays in front of the other one and where their priorities have to be, and I understand where he was headed, and we all get it. I mean, it's something that wasn't very new in this building. It may be new outside, but this is something that we've discussed quite a bit. Hey, let's go get it, man.
Major, also in the last week you extended and Kendall be able to keep him. What is that? The continuity there, just to be able to have your offensive coordinator still in place.
Yeah, it's tough nowadays in terms of your staff, and you can have camaraderie. It's really tough to create continuity unless you just have bags of money, and so you have to have that from an offensive defensive standpoint. Strength and conditioning, your recruiting, your academics, your training room. You need to have certain parts of your program that aren't constantly turning over, and so to have people in the administration understand that and then work tirelessly to make sure that those things happen are tremendous. And you feel grateful as a head coach when you have people that all understand we play from the same scoreboard, and there's certain things we need.
Do you think you could have a defensive coordinator in place, or at least hired by the time you have bowl game?
I'm not sure exactly when that hire will happen. Obviously, it could happen in 5 minutes if we want it to be, but we want to make sure it's right, Mark. And it's just not something I really want to play out in the public. It's an interview process. We want to find the right person, and I will let you know as soon as we find it.
Major, is there any discussion in terms of whoever you're talking to about changing schemes, or are you up for a possibility of going away from what you run the last couple of years?
I think we'll discuss all that once we hire who we hire.
You've also got recruiting to focus on. Just how kind of crazy is this time of year and finals for the players and all that kind of stuff when you are preparing for a bowl game?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's what we're getting ready to have a meeting about here in about an hour is, keep the main thing the main thing. And right now it's about finishing strongly in class, doing well so you don't have to, hopefully take a final. We all remember those days. So just making sure that we have our academics in line. We're taking care of our bodies, treatment, healing up from a regular season, and then at some point here in the next week, we'll start turning solely towards Army, but there's some opportunities there in these bowl practices to get better against one another.
Major, first, just with you mentioned Dan, can you kind of talk about him being your play caller in the bowl, and secondly, will anyone on your staff be considered for the coordinator job?
Yeah, Dan will do a great job. Dan's been in this defense and this scheme for 4 years now. Understands the terminology, has been a part of it, seen it go through different phases from 15 to 16, and so on and so forth. But has plenty of experience in it and will be able to put a great plan together and get ready for Army.
And as far as will you look at?
I'm not going to talk about anything revolving around. I'm focused on Army and our bowl game.
What about injury wise? Is there a chance some guys could come back? Is Garrett Davis even an option, or?
He could be, could not. I mean, he could be, but right now it would be really pushing him. I mean, it'd be really on the front end of him doing that, and he's been able to run around and do some things, change some directions, but it's a totally different deal with pads on and bearing weight and anchoring down against things.
The also with I guess some of the other guys that came out. One of the things was you kind of had mentioned Clayton moving forward, but
sir.
he's at that 4-game. Being a bowl game, is there any internal talk about if you don't play him, you can still redshirt him?
Yeah, you have that opportunity this year, but you also have that opportunity next year as well. With a healthy Derek, you still have 4 games that you can play Clayton in and still redshirt him next year. You have Bryson back as well. You'll have another quarterback on campus in January. So whether the redshirt comes this year or next year, those things that we'll look into. But ultimately, it's about creating the best schedule that these guys can finish their finals in, and that we can practice and get ready to go beat Army and win number 9.
Anything else?
All
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks,
All right, thank